From every strand on the line of your reel, to the rods, to the anglers, to the lures on the end of your hook, let's talk about those big bass here on Co-Angler's Corner with your hosts, Rob Welch and John Stoudinger.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John.
How y'all are? Cajun Rob here. Parts unknown, but I am in reach of Lake Erie, so I'm a little bit out of my element, and yeah, I am cold.
Yeah, you know, you pick on me about being in the north. I have grass in my lawn.
Well, there's going to be black ice in Kentucky tomorrow and none here, so go figure.
So I just want to let you know, New York's not all bad.
Oh, I know. Hey, I've enjoyed my trip up here to the north. So, in fact, tomorrow I'll go further north than I've ever been, so almost to Sturgeon Bay. So that's pretty cool.
Hey, if you get a chance, stop at Park Falls, Wisconsin.
Park Falls, okay.
That's the St. Croix factory.
Oh, okay. Well, there's the Shields Sporting Goods I want to stop at. I've heard a lot about Shields. I know one of them has like a big saltwater tank in the front, and in the back they have a big freshwater tank. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. All right. Well, tonight's guest is a familiar name to you guys if you've been paying attention to our show. He's on every couple of months or so. Nick Dame, Virginia, Maryland, Florida, parts unknown, wherever you can catch fish. But tonight we're going to talk about wintertime fishing, not just down south, but we're going to cover up north as well and in the Central East. How's that for Central East?
And everywhere in between. All
right. So let's bring Nick on so he can take my spot there. Hold on. Uh-oh. And we'll get Nick over here in the big show.
There, up.
Oh, getting closer.
There we go. We got to do that juggling. We got to do. How's it going, Nick? Man, good to see you again.
Man, it's funny to see y'all here. Starting to get starting to get a little familiar, but I love it. I appreciate y'all having me on. I just like to talk fishing, so it gives me to do it.
Just my homemade lighting from the hotel room, so start sliding out.
Works good. I'm over here. We're in the Christmas season. We have the house torn apart, trying to maximize space for guests coming. And I'm over in a little corner right now that I probably haven't seen in the house in probably about 3 months. To be honest with you.
Oh, I hear you, man. I hear you.
Oh man. So, yeah, we're just talking about some cold weather fishing. I'm ready.
Yeah. Can you go through just briefly talk about how you got to where you are fishing wise?
That was be honest with you, it was a leap of faith. A little bit about my history. I'm gonna shout them out. I already told y'all. My dogs. We took home a big W against Texas, but I started up. But really, I fished my whole life. I grew up coastal Virginia. My family's from the mountains of Virginia, so Smith Mountain Lake was a familiar place for me. Lake Gaston on the border of Virginia and South Carolina was another stomping grounds of mine. Just getting started out in a few other small town spots. But that's where I started at, was just kind of fishing saltwater. For me, it got too easy because my dad was a local hammer out there. He knew right where to go, where to be, when to be, and he understood with the tidal James River, which I ended up taking on the freshwater side of it. But he understood the saltwater portion of the James River, and I took over the freshwater. Not as good as he did the salt, but nonetheless, that became my thing. And fishing a local lake close to my house as a kid. But when I lost my offers for football and I got injured, I was stuck in the house, and I've never been one for video games and indoors, and that's just not me. I've always been an outdoorsman. So I had to find something. That's really when I started. I've always fished. I've always bass fished, but I got super serious about it. I found this little thing called Tournament X. It was a digital tournaments, and I'm competitive. I'm very competitive, almost to a fault. And boy, did that end up. That's what hooked me right there, was digitalized tournaments. As much as technologies came through, kind of showing how young I am now. So not dating myself, but that's when they first came out. And then that's just kind of, I moved around, moving up from my the industry that I work in, and I even got a point to where I could guide full time for a period of time down here in Florida. But every step of the way I've traveled. This year, this upcoming year, I'm trying to make a trip up to the St. Lawrence and see what I can do up there and start expanding my horizons. Delta's the bucket list that I'm going to here pretty soon out in California. Cool. And everything from everything in the Southeast, really, except for Texas and a few other states. That's really, I've just been able to be fortunate enough to be able to hook up a boat and get off during the week and drive somewhere, fish a couple of days, and drive back home. It's really been fortunate enough to do that.
Cool, I would take a little more than a few days to do the St. Lawrence.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to. That's my goal, is to get up there and spend some time up there, or take a few guide trips up there, learn something about it, because that place is huge.
Yeah. It is. Just to let you know, there's a Toyota Series event up there.
I might have to stop in. I know a few guys that run those series. I'll have to see if I can't swing something there.
Hey, Rob, you hear that?
Yeah, I hear.
You're down in Florida. Do you know Michael Catt?
Not familiar with Cat. I'd love to get a chance to meet him, but not yet.
Because he'll be up.
Yeah, great guy.
All right.
Great guy.
You'll have to put me in contact. I'd love to. I'd love to split the bill too.
Michael Catt Fishing on all the channels. So
great guy.
I'll check him out. I'm gonna have to now.
Yeah. Yeah. So all right, enough about that. Let's get into why people are here tonight and talk about wintertime fishing.
This is wintertime fishing. Now, I'll start off by saying this. In my younger days, I was just in the mindset of, if it hits below 40 degrees, just go ahead and start taking your reels and rods apart, cleaning them up, and let's just go ahead and hang them up. Where now, let's be fully honest with you, it is one of my favorite types of fishing to do. Point blank is, I love the winter. I look forward to the winter every year and the transition and flip over to spawn. And just, I've been able to I've had a lot of great people teach me a lot of great things about wintertime bass fishing and how to follow the patterns and the setups, and just being able to utilize that and figuring out what highs and what lows you need to ride and what you need to do in that situation. I have a buffet of bait right now sitting on the table right in front of me, and I mean, from anything from top to bottom, we have you covered. So we'll get into that.
All right.
The absolute juice right there.
I'll tell you one, in a couple months, you can throw your topwater away for up here.
I figured. Now this is where I'll dive into Florida a little bit to have my local guys out, and then I'll work my way up, so to speak. But Florida is a little, when it comes to Florida, because a lot of guys are probably watching this looking come down in Florida, like, when's a good time? Florida's kind of the mysterious beast when it comes to winter fishing. My first year down here, I didn't know what to expect, but I got a cold dose of reality real quick. Cold front, warm up. That second and third day is really the day you're looking to go fish. Day number one, you might as well forget it. You have to find really the thermocline on average. I would say the thermocline that I'm looking for is water temperature within the 70 degrees on average. Of course, up north, it's going to be a little bit different, different scenarios. But in Florida, I'm looking for about that 70-ish degree water in that ballpark, sometimes a little cooler, sometimes a little bit warmer. But in the winter, that's where I'm looking for. So commonly where Florida fish will sit from anywhere in the summer into a foot of water down to 10 foot. I'm going to start my way down that 10-foot section of water, and maybe even a little bit deeper if I don't necessarily see what I want to there. A lot of times grass is a great spot for them to get in and get hunkered up in somewhere. And oftentimes where you have thicker grass, you have more sunlight, so you're going to find bass more there. So that's when you want to start utilizing some stuff when you're looking. Break out my first one. There's two things that I do, especially if I'm trying to target some grass and make things a little bit easy for myself. I'm trying to find where that bright sunlight's at, where that water's going to be warmer at. First thing I'm really looking for, I'm looking for that speed worm. Obviously, I'm going to go a little bit smaller. There's two things in winter that I've learned, that I have been taught, and that was, you either need to extremely downsize or extremely upsize. So during winter, you're getting one of the two. You're getting the base size, but most of the time for me, especially if I'm tournament fishing, not searching or trying to get dialed in, I am throwing this big old speed worm right here. This is the bitters baits right here. And I don't know if that's pretty common up north there down in Florida. It is awesome. I swung by there the other day and was in heaven. It is awesome. That's awesome. And it's awesome bait for a good price point. Shameless plug here. But bitters baits, this is their version of like a Magnum speed worm. The reason why I don't throw the Magnums is for me, they become a little too thick, and I don't like to compromise using lighter wire, as we talked about last time. So I'm not going to necessarily negotiate action for better hookups. So you find that kind of middle ground. But when I'm out here fishing, especially especially when I'm fishing in around grass in Florida or areas that involve grass in general outside of Florida and outside of the wintertime. I'm throwing a speed worm, but that's real key is you either want to go really small or really big. And that way you can kind of gauge the bite. We have a lot of live scope now. That kind of slows the game down for you if you're using live scope. This, of course, isolates the back of the boat. Besides peeking over, which I do, I have no problem doing peeking over my boater's shoulder and just taking a peek to see what they're looking like.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm feeling you.
Which
Brian Carter says going to be a great show. It definitely is.
Yep.
Our home lake.
There you go.
Brian. Awesome. But when I'm targeting grass, and especially in Florida, I'm looking for that 10-foot range, which is going to be harder. You're going to find grass edges there. I'm looking for brighter lights. In Florida, riprap isn't huge. More so up north, you get a little more riprap. Anywhere that makes sense that looks like it's going to be warm, especially with deeper water around it or channel swings, that's where I'm really going to key in on, because the water you're more apt to find, especially with submerged rock. That doesn't not necessarily a thing in Florida. It is, but not as big as up north. When you're kind of keying in on these points, and I'm just going to break into a roadmap now. When I'm going out in cold weather, I'm cold. I know I'm not going to have y'all. I don't know what sports y'all play, but I'll never forget getting ready to go pitch and play baseball. I hated warming up and getting ready to pitch on those cold days. My muscles are tight, bound up. I'm having to do extra stretching, get there earlier, get ready. I feel tight. I feel sluggish. I feel slow. The bass are feeling that effect too. But now it's like, okay, now your mindset is, I need to think slow.
Yep.
I need to be prepared to just settle down. And I need to be prepared to look a lot more than usual. Because you're going to have to find the thermocline first. And if you don't have an idea of one of your local body of water where your thermocline is going to be, you're really going to have to focus in on, okay, hey, look, I know rough estimate, I want to be between X and Y range, but let me go a little bit outside of the bottom, the deepest I want to look at. Excuse me, my dog is he's fired.
Are you good?
Hey.
Are you good?
He's a healer in Malinois mix. He does not like being in his kennel right now. He wants to be with Dad.
Yep.
Oh, tell me about it. But he will. That's the problem.
Yep.
But basically, you just want to look for where the deepest water is going to be at, and then kind of go a little bit deeper, try to find where that thermocline is going to be at. The thermocline's going to be at. He's telling me about it. He did.
Oh, yeah. He knows.
Yeah, he just wants to voice his opinion too. He has some ideas about deep water fishing that also.
Yep. But and I got a lake in Kentucky. It's real deep, and there's no structure on it.
Mm-hmm.
The fish hang in a thermocline all year, so you got to get your crankbait right in that thermocline to get bit.
Yep. And that's where suspending baits really come key into play. First one I'll break out here is when you're looking for that when you're looking for the thermocline and you identify it for your area. After you go and you look on the contour swings and everything like that, the first thing I like to throw, especially for scoping, I'm throwing a suspending jerkbait, and that's really the key because I like to start. Some people like to start slower, a little less aggressive. You know, I'm not necessarily going to try to determine where they're at and try to throw one or the other and spook them. I know a jerkbait's a good medium bait. You can get bit by. I've seen a fish barely even 10 inches bite a jerkbait that's half its size, and I've seen 6 and 8 pounders bite a jerkbait. So it's a good in-between bait. It's not super aggressive, but it's challenging, and it's attention grabbing. So what I'm going to see is if you're watching live scope, if you're as a boater, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking, okay, I found the fish at. I found for me, I found 12-foot in Florida. I'm at that 12-foot range where I usually catch them in 10. Or I like to sit 7 to 10. I'm going to go look about that 12-foot range. I'm going to start, okay, I found them in that where the thermocline's at. I know what the water temperature's looking like. So now I'm going to pattern that based off of the depth. And when I find some, if I'm scoping or even using Mega 360 to pinpoint where they're at, I'm going to, especially using that live, I'm going to watch how they react to that jerkbait. They're just staring at it, just looking up at it. I'm not going to throw that jerkbait to them. I'm going to throw something probably a little bit smaller. We're going to see if we're going to get bit first. What I'm going to throw is definitely something that depends on, most of the time we're going to find them on the bottom. Now, if you're in a lake that doesn't have structure, this is where this gets real good. This right here that's where my next pull out. Let me hold it like this. You see this head right here? This is a dart, like a dart head. It's built for live scope, but I like throwing it submitted. I like throwing it submerged and holding it in the right area, because what you can do is you pop it up to them and let it fall and kind of keep it in that range and let that tail do the motion. Now this right here, a Zoom tiny fluke, not the super fluke.
Yep.
There we are. Zoom tiny fluke. That is the one that you want. It has a lot of action for a little bait. As you can see, it's a bunch of action on this little darter head. You're able just to kind of keep it in that zone, and you're able to get their attention. Now, that doesn't do the trick. That tells me everything I need to know.
Yep.
I am breaking out. I don't have any right now, but I'm either breaking out. I'm slow rolling that square bill in front of them, which not a lot of people will agree with this time of year. I have had a lot of good luck just popping it in their face when they get near them, and there's something about the square bill's slash that really sets them on fire. Either I'm doing that or I'm grabbing a DT from Rapala, and I am just slow rolling it through their face. Oftentimes that's going to get them to react. Now, if I have fish on the bottom, and I know, and they tend to be, sometimes they will get around bait. Up in Georgia, I've had a lot of luck doing that, going and getting into, especially in Georgia, but in places where you have yearly drawdowns. A lot of places, Kentucky, Georgia, Tennessee, some too. They all have yearly drawdowns. Well, you have to go where the deeper water is, and you have to go where that thermocline is. So you have bait, thermocline, because bass go deep. Commonly, people think, they try to figure out why do bass go deep when we have cold water. When we have cold water, it's because there's high pressure. The deeper. Have you ever dove down into a swimming pool down to like 10 foot? What's the first thing your ears do?
Pop.
Yep. Well, that's because there's pressure deeper, so they're going and balancing their body out. So you're going to want to find the area that they don't go down deep because that's colder water. If we're trying to escape the cold, they go up 2 foot, 3 foot of water.
Yep.
So that's the goal. There is for us to. That's the goal for me to find kind of where that deeper area is, see where they're moving at, how deep they're moving, identify the thermocline too that they're sitting in, because it can be. You start getting all these factors, and it's hard to use the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. Yep. When I'm going out on the water, I'm going, where can I find deep water at?
Yep.
What's the pressure looking like? And number three is, okay, I fish here. Let's see if we can identify the thermocline a little bit deeper. Those are the three things that lay the base work of my day when I'm going out. I'm going to usually I'm usually looking at spots that have been producing recently that may be a little bit closer to some deeper water, a point of drop off. So if I've been catching them in, let's just say 10 foot of water right now, I'm going to go probably to 12 to 15 if there's a point in the deeper water, if there's a channel swing in the deeper water, by using your graphing cars. I love Humminbird. Y'all know that. Yep. Using my Lake Master chip, I'm going to go see, okay, hey, look, there's a little submerged point right here using the topographic lines. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go find that. And I'm going to go just scan it. I'm going to go look. I'm going to look a little while, see if they're there. Because if I know they're on a spot 2 days ago before the cold front, now the cold front's pushed in and it's day number 1 or day number 2 of the cold front, I'm going to kind of be looking at that same general vicinity, especially in deeper water, because they're pulled up there for a reason, whether it be bait or water temperature, or they're just coming in off of the channel just to rest for a little bit, feed a little bit, and get back on and move into their next portion of their pattern. So that's kind of that's my kind of roadmap. Now, like I said, if I get them higher up in the water column, of course, I've already said I'm throwing that jerk bait, especially if they're staging up, which means most likely they're feeding in the first place. So you kind of have your green light already. If I can't get them to bite the jerk bait, if I can't get them to bite the crankbait, well, I'm just going to get straight up ugly with them. Not a lot of guys are going to tell you to throw a 6-inch swim bait with a big flashing tail, but I'm throwing it right in front of them every time. I'm challenging them. I'm saying, here's a big bait, here's a big, slow rolling it, not necessarily absolutely getting it out of dodge, slow rolling it, just saying, hey, here you go. What are you going to do? And oftentimes that's when you will end up getting that surprise bite. Now that's more of a Florida type bait. Now swim baits in general, you have a swim bait head kind of like this. This isn't exactly what I'm trying to show, but the style of swim bait head right here. Big, like especially with a Kitech 3.3 swimmer, just throwing a bigger profile than a 3.3. Even sometimes I'll throw a 4 just to see if they're going to go for it. And oftentimes when they're up, you can get away with that. If they're up and they don't like my big bait, I have a lot of options. I'll try to work my way silent. During the winter, I'll have a lot of rods on the deck until I figure it out. I try to go silent first. I try not to really get them. I try to see if I can get them going before I get them riled up. But if they don't want to work with me, that's their choice. The first thing, and depending on what I'm seeing, I'm either going one of two things. I'm either going with a bigger rattle trap, or I'm throwing the mini. Now, that's, of course, reading your live scope, seeing how they're reacting to the bait sizes as you mix it up. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, I'll do all this one of my first spots. I'll use based off of what I've been catching them, how I've been catching them. I'll kind of use the data that I've had there. I'm always creating trip logs in my head of what I'm catching them on. If I know there's going to be a little more bait or they're more bait driven or up off, I'm going to throw something more bait. And I really like starting off with this little guy. This is a quarter of an ounce. It's a little guy. You just get the vibration, you get it singing, and oftentimes that little bit of sound and that vibration, that feeling will just send them to go there.
Yeah,
So,
I find I get more bites on that quarter ounce. Like I said, in the cold weather and early in the year, that quarter ounce seems like it's usually money for me.
It is. And the reason why I found that at least my theory, you can correct me too if you think so. My theory on that one is solely the pure fact here is that it's aggressive, it's loud, but the profile isn't huge. So it's easy target. That's what I can determine this to. But now let's just say I've gone and found them and they're in deeper water and they are just not moving. I just can't get them to move whatsoever. Where they want a cold front, they're down. They're balancing off their temperature. I can see that real quick. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm still opening the door with a jerkbait, 100%.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just see if I can get some interest in feeding up, because then that makes it real simple. If they're nosing that jerkbait, not really committed to it, I'm pulling out the big old chatterbait, and this is the Evo Elite from and with a big aggressive tail. I don't want anything sleek. I want to throw it in their face. I want to let them know that it's there. And if they're nosing that jerkbait, a lot of times they'll come back and hit that chatterbait at a consistent retrieve. Now, if I see some interest in the chatterbait, see some interest in the jerkbait, we're still not committing. I'm going right back to it, right back at them with it. And you know what I'm doing this time, though? And this is where we start to get a little bit of little finesse here, and this is when I start kind of telling where people kind of look at me crazy, and I'm saying, well, so what I'm saying is it's a little technique that I put together here in Florida over the last year that I've just been experimenting with and just kind of figuring it out. And it has done wonders for me. What I'll do is I like to run about a 7.3 to 7.6 medium heavy chatterbait rod, medium heavy, extra fast. You want a little bit of a softer tip because when you pull into them, you want to give yourself a little break because you're going to feel the bite before you need to. That just gives you a break. It buys you some time. What I'm doing is I'm holding that rod at a 45-degree angle up in my hand, for opposite direction of where I casted. I am cranking on that rod 5 turns real fast, just so I feel the buzz.
Yep.
And I'm cutting it. And I'm going to let it sit there depending on how cold it is. Depends on how cold my hands got doing that. It's going to be about the same amount of time, which comes for me, I found about 6 to 7 seconds of just sitting there, slow count 1, 2, just to 7. Then real hard firing that thing up again. So it's going to flare up and then swim back down real fast. What it's imitating is a dead bait fish.
Yep.
And so what that right there is that I have produced 25 in the recent, back in the middle of one of the coldest fronts we had last year here in Florida. And for Florida, this is cold, but about 40-degree weather, almost 39-degree weather. I caught 25 pounds.
Wow.
Just off of that right there. It's big enough. It's a big aggressive profile. It's a dying bait fish. Oftentimes I'll just reel up to it, and all of a sudden I feel that line swimming away from me. And I'm like, oh, there it is. You just click the bail, let it run for a couple seconds, let them get a good hold of it and set the hook. That's paid off very well for me. Now, if that's my number one go-to, that's really the juice for tonight. But if that's not working, a lot of guys will tell you to go down in size, which is 100% true. This is a mini max chatterbait right here. That mini max is going to be your best friend in this cold weather. If they're needing some vibration, if a little bit of noise is talking to them and getting that interest, it has a very, very strong vibration. You can feel it in your rod for such a little thing. It's a great vibration. I'll either yo-yo it like I do that one, or just have a slow bump and retrieve and just kind of popping it off very slow and letting that high frequency kind of take for itself, especially around rock. It just sets those fish on fire. And that's one of the big ones right there. So that's just kind of your mainstream stuff, just your core. Those are what I call my core baits. Those are what I'm finding fish with. I'm testing them. I'm seeing what they're going to act like. Those are the cores. Now we're getting into a little bit different. If I'm making a trip up to Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, I'm starting to get a little bit colder. colder weather, colder water. I know submerged rock is down there. I know there's some brush. I love some brush. I'll still ride at the top of the brush, of course, watch them. But if I know that they're on the bottom, little football jig.
Ah, there you go.
Little football jig. There we go. Little football jig. That has been money for me, especially on the James River. I learned that on the James River. That little football jig, little micro finesse football jig, just kind of bouncing around real slow, just real easy, just trying not to move it, but barely move it. You're going to take a lot of time. That's why it's important for on winter days to kind of identify where they're at quickly. Test the water, have a bunch of rods on the deck, which is not fun for anybody. I really don't like having a bunch of rods on the deck because that means I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, but you got options.
But I can kind of test them. I can throw the jerk bait in there real quick, 2 or 3 passes. They're not really feeling that. Let's throw the big swim bait through. They didn't respond to that. Okay, let's try the vertical. So something up and down, see if they like that, especially for spot and smallmouth. That sometimes can be the trick to get them to fire over. If they don't like that, then especially submerged, then run the jerk bait back through them and then have a stroll on the chatterbait and try to pop it up in front of their face because you can control how deep that chatterbait, how high and how low that chatterbait goes, especially if you have it on your live scope. You can control how high and how much you put out or how fast that you can make it work. You can control that. So if you feel like, hey, I'm getting bit at when I go to first lift it up, or hey, if they're hammering it as soon as I hit the peak, then I can go for a second longer. Or they kind of are just swatting at it. I need to slow down a little bit. It's going too fast for them. You can vary that. But that's what's important to see real quick. Have a couple of different baits on your playing field to see what route they want to go with, and then key in. And these baits are what I use to key in. I start really, if I'm really around structure, especially, I'm dialing up the old football jig. That will do you justice any time of year, but especially this time of year, do you well.
Especially around rip-wrap. Same with they'll get around that rip-wrap, trying to get some warmth, and you just kind of step it down. Yeah, that gets your arm broke.
That will, in a heartbeat. And that's how you find the bigger spots too. Especially, not a lot of people utilize that, but knowing your color in your area, that's only going to be through time on the water. But knowing what color there are that time of year and size and display, moon cycle. Now, if I'm not in the right moon cycle or anything like that, because there's a lot that plays in it for each lake, and that would be, I could go on for days about that, of knowing your forage, going where to go find your forage, with local creeks, talk to your wildlife commission. They can tell you a lot better because they spend time looking into that. That's how I made my jig choices. I would call the local wildlife of that state. Hey, I'm on this lake. What kind of forage do you know the color? And then oftentimes they will have that readily available. If I have resources that I can utilize, I'm going to utilize them.
Absolutely.
A lot of times you can find it online. There's a lot of great places with great reports, especially in Georgia. Georgia does a whole forum for it. And I've been led astray a little bit by it, but it's put me in the right direction. Utilize your tools. The internet is such a great thing that we, for fishermen, I forget I even have a phone sometimes. And that can be used for that. It's something that they can't dock you for, especially if you're fun fishing. Why not utilize? Why not make it simpler? Because if our goal is to maximize our time on the water, why not do prepare instead of watching an hour and a half to 2 hours of football in the evening, which I love to death. If I know I'm going on a big trip, I'm dialed in for the 4 days before it. I want to at least have an idea where I can look if I don't know the area, or at least I'm calling somebody and getting some information to say, hey, I need to really head here.
Absolutely.
Now this is my favorite.
Oh yeah.
This shaky head, anywhere, anytime, anywhere. It's like the post office, rain, snow, sleet, or shine. It's going to deliver. I'll tell you that right there. I have Aaron Martin and all them old finesse fishermen that always do great in tournaments. They were on to something, and I have poured out a whole bunch of just trying to figure out what they had. And thankfully I've had some great finesse Florida fishermen, which people say finesse Florida. It's there. It's a whole nother type of fishing. It's elevated my game for the rest of the country that they swear by it. And there's a lot of great technology. This is the new, let me see if I can find it. This is the new shake my head jig from Brandon Lattimore.
That's what I use, man. I think it's awesome.
I use that and the big bite shaky head if I don't mind a little bit of a bigger base. I like the screw lock typically because you get a better hook set and the worm will tear away and you get better connection. But I really like the key for this one. I really like how it works. The angle that it puts that bait way up there in their face allows it to sit so I can either get it straight, or if I want to, I can kind of scrunch it up a little bit.
Yep.
And kind of have it a little more less aggressive. But I really love that long of a shank on it.
Yeah.
Which should come in clear in a minute. The longer shank on it is really what allows you for if you're using light wire hooks and especially light wire, especially light tackle too. That is really that's what keeps those fish pegged. It allows you to drive it through. Because a lot of times for me, I'm in Florida, but I've always adapted. Y'all know I'm 6'7". I've adapted a 7'6" spinning rod. That is a great, cast stuff a mile. I can throw 6-pound test on it like I like to. It's just a killer little bait. And that's what I just love to utilize that with super light line, especially in the winter. Just I don't want to give them any reason to be turned off to a bait that I'm throwing. And of course, throw a natural forage. Anything green pumpkin is always safe. If there's a slight touch of chartreuse or anything of that nature, in the crawfish, I'm matching that little bit of chartreuse with dip it, which is something I haven't had to do for years. Zoom's doing really good about putting different colored tails now, so you don't have to do that. And of course, that's one great thing that they're doing. Also with that, I don't have it with me. It's a drop shot. That's one thing I can do. And I will adjust, believe it or not, I will adjust my drop shot length to your traditional 6 inches. If I know that they're up a couple feet off the bottom, I will actually throw, as crazy as it sounds, I will actually throw a 2-foot drop shot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's tough. It is tough. You have to have a rod for that one.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it's not fun, but that's where that 7.6 comes in handy. I just kind of heave-ho it over the side of the boat and hope for the best, hope I get in the right spot. And usually I do. I've been able to figure it out. But that's something that when I started doing that, because you can just hold it in their face and shake it in their face, and you pestering them, they're in the way. They're not going to go away, especially in those deeper water, clear lakes. They just don't have an excuse but to bite it.
Yep. And talk about worms, Z-Man, they finally come out with a dip and dive for the Z-Man stuff. They've been working on it for years and years. It just come out. I think it's like one I can't remember. I'll post it later. But yeah, they got a Z-Man just for Z-Man type plastics. That's chartreuse, orange. So that's pretty awesome.
Then I have to go. Then after that, so I'm going to have to try to look into that because I like Z-Man plastics.
Yep.
I'm getting ready to go into the finesse portion. I think any fisherman knows what I'm after talking about a trick worm. I prefer the trick worm over this, to be fully honest with you. It's just the way I like to fish. Yep. I like to maintain bottom contact with slight flares. I am a river fisherman majority of the time. I just have gotten way better. But utilizing the Senko.
Oh, absolutely.
Utilizing the Senko, and if you need to, you can pick it up off the bottom and let it shoot up, or simply you can just drag it or hop it. And the Yum Dinger, if you want a Senko that likes to hop, the Yum Dinger is one you have to buy. I used to hate on Yum for quality plastic. Sure, you go through a lot of them. But to be honest with you, you don't even have – I throw them weightless. The weight is great for it. I will throw them weightless on light line, and I'll just sit there and hop them. And it stays great bottom contact, great action. The Yum Dinger is a very underutilized bait. It's something that I would start putting – if I was at home and I take anything from this, to start utilizing the Yum Dinger. I never threw Senkos. I hated the Gary Yamamoto Senko. I have not found my Senko, but the Yum Dinger is my Senko. I'll be honest with you. Everyone, that's going to be controversial. There's your hot take. We can go ahead and reel that. Put that one on the reel.
And you get like a 50-pack for cheap. I've got them.
Cheap. And another thing I like to do is a lot of guys will get especially bait makers, will get the Yum Dinger molds.
Yep.
And they'll sell them to you for a dime a dozen.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
It's ridiculous how cheap you can get them from. Now, to get a little more finesse, if I know in winter they are going to be around bait. You're going to get into some fish that are going to be around bait. You're going to have to play to the size of the bait, which common shad is going to be about the size of this Super Fluke Junior.
Yep.
There you go. Super Fluke Junior. I prefer pearl. What I'll do, there's two ways I'll do this. I will drop shot one down if I know that I have, especially in Georgia, I've had a lot of great luck in tournaments, and a lake I can't tell y'all because the boys will figure it out.
Yep. I'll blame you.
I've had a lot of great luck, and a lot of guys were struggling to catch fish in these cold fronts where it's a high of 36 and 39 out in Georgia, up in North Georgia. Not on the west side, not on the east side of Georgia, but on the west side of Georgia, which a lot of people don't think there's a lot of fish there, but there are.
Oh,
That's
yes.
enough said. They'll be able to figure it out now. Where I've hit these marinas, especially, and I've carried that throughout all over the southeast and getting up northern too, outside of Georgia. Is you go to these marinas, and there's going to be bait there, and that's why the spotted bass, that's why some of the more aggressive cold water fish get in these marinas. And marinas a great spot to look too, is because it holds bait. It's deeper water, and there's a lot of cover. So I would go through these schools of bait, blow them up with a DT 16. Drop shot a fluke down to them, and you want to talk about connection every time. That is another great way. Another great way is I will just put a jig head, something that looks natural. This is actually a little red jig head, but how little it is makes it perfect. I'll sometimes drop this down and let it sit on the bottom, because the way that this red one is, it's a little more curved. I haven't done it yet, but I will file it to where it sits like this. And what I'll do is just pop it.
Yep.
Pop it. I need to be back over here. Pop. Just kind of let that have that dying, more finessey bait fish, and I can, if I want to bring it up higher, I can. And where it just sits, and just kind of, you can just kind of have that dying bait fish. Number two, this is a darter head. I just like the falling action. I'll also put it on a 1/16. Ball head is really the best utilization for it, but for me with the darter head, I'll especially towards the winter, I'll start switching over. But I don't know if Jacob Wheeler put way back last year before these got released, kind of dropped the nugget, and I've been hawking it. When they released the freeloader, they have what's called a stroller rig, which is, like I said, best utilized with a 1/16 to 1/8 black ball jig. But I'll put it on this little darter head right here, and what I'll do is, because of the way that it falls, it kind of slides.
Right.
It allows me to pick it up, and it'll slide back real fast, and that is a lethal way to get a good bite on especially for largemouth who are kind of indecisive. If you're getting them around any deeper structure or anything like that, where you see them kind of tightened up, but not really committing, you just kind of need the difference. Or if you're searching for fish, just with a ball head or just with this, just dragging it is another great way for you to utilize your bait. But the freeloader, if y'all haven't picked one up, do yourself a favor, go buy a color in every pack that you think would obtain to your local lakes of water, and buy it and get weird with your jig heads and everything, because it will eventually pay off for you, because it has been something that has caught me fish around grass, fish and rock, fish around structure. It's too good. It's what I think is going to become the new finesse jig. It's just
Absolutely.
too good.
Yep.
It's just too good. And lastly, and this is going to kind of cover a little bit more of Florida, but if we start getting into the heat of the day, or even especially on the herring lakes like Georgia and some into Tennessee, if you get the herring lakes, and even into Alabama, as that day heats up and the surface temperature starts to rise, I've gone through the morning cold. I've kind of had an idea where they're going. Commonly on day 2, which I'll cover next, day 2 of the heat up, a lot of times the surface temperature rise, the herring will, along with most of your bait fish, will start, and you will get some topwater action later in the day, about 3 o'clock commonly. And that is where this little guy, I learned this from Lake Anna up in Virginia. This little buzzbait right here is a lethal weapon to have. It's from Strike Keen. It's called the Pro Buzz.
Yep.
The mini version. And all that is on the tail behind it. And this is very particular. You have to kind of cut down the bait right and kind of work it the right direction to kind of get it as straight as you can. I have the tail upside down. I do that for a reason. I want to move a little bit more water with it. I want to make a little bit more noise. A little Kitech. That is a 3-inch easy shiner. Make sure it goes right on there too. I just want the boot up, keeping it on top, not dragging it down. But it just simulates it gives too much of the action of some bait fish schooling. So especially if you get, I found about this on Lanier. Funny story, I got to shout him out. Every time I tell the story, I have to. My buddy, he was not a fisherman at all, but he's a great fisherman. I'll give him that. We were out fishing, and he brought a buzzbait, and we were about 40 degrees, 30 degrees. Water was real cold front day 2. And fish were starting to move a little bit, but not quite. And he got up there. He threw that little thing around the these trees by where we saw some bait at, and he started smoking them. I mean, it was one after another every cast. I'm digging through everything I have to find one. I'm like, let me see what you're throwing here. And he just throwing that little buzz bait. And I was like, let me make this better for you. I grabbed a little Kitech that I had on a little swim on a 1/16 swim bait head, and I just threw it on there, and he just started catching them. It's just the right tail action. It's the right water displacement. And it will get bit because you can get a little more aggressive with it. And that's on the heat up and on day. And I know we have a limited more amount of time. I think 18 minutes.
No, you good, man.
We'll get into we're getting to day 2. Day 2, so day 2, we've had day 1. We survived. We put some fish in the boat because Nick gave some juice out. You know, we caught a couple good bites on the chatterbait, yo-yoing it. We threw some of our more finessey baits, and especially our little darter rig right here. This will win you some tournaments. Y'all, please put that in your book. This darter head with a little fluke. You can even throw it on your preferred jig head. It's up to you. But we kind of got a few bites. We were able to work them. We were able to get into day 2, or we're going to day 2 of the tournament regardless. And boy, was that a butt whooping yesterday. Well, just trust me. The light is at the end of the tunnel for you for this tournament, because today is getting ready to go down. Yesterday, those fish, commonly in winter, we stay cold at a cooler temperature. The bass will get normal. They will normalize and start feeding at a regular speed. They'll get back. They may have a lethargic bite depending on how cold you are, but you have a general idea of how you're going to catch them. But that dreaded cold front comes through. That northern cold front, harsh winds, maybe even some rain. And you just got through day number 1 there. Day number 2, the lights at the end of the tunnel. We're having some heat up. The water temperatures warmed up yesterday. It stayed pretty warm overnight. We're gonna have a good heat up. Get ready to start throwing down, because here they come. Day number 2. Honestly, I saw yesterday they're feeding up a little bit, so we're doing all right. I do have some fish down. My field goes from everything I just showed you to 3 simple mainly, and this depends. I'm going usually about 4 to 5 rods typically, and it depends on what I've seen. So there's going to be a rotation. I'm taking out the crankbait, to be honest with you. I love the crankbait. Live and die by the crankbait, though. If you on the heat up, it's tied on. It may be next to my co-angler. You know, it's there. So it's there. It's in my mind, but I'm too heavily reliant on the crankbait, and I know that. But day number 1, the first cast that I'm making, without a doubt, I'm going back to jerkbait, suspended jerkbait still. Or if you have some areas where you found them, they're hanging on the bottom, you can always get a deeper diving jerkbait, especially from Lucky Craft. The pointer goes really deep. The Berkeley Stunna is a very good aggressive bait. And then on top of that, I will always go with the good old mega bass. That is what made me a jerkbait fisherman. Day number 2, if I'm having some fish that are a little more aggressive, and I know I can get them to react to that jerkbait, that hard slash and quick reaction near their face, I will actually go into a little bit shallower water, because they're going to range a little bit with the water temperature. So just be prepared for that. I'm still looking in the same area. If I see them pulled up a little bit shallower, I'm getting that. If it's 10 foot of water, I'll throw a 12 foot or even 15 foot jerkbait. So I know I'm slashing that bottom, and it suspends, and it may come up a little bit, but I have them darting in front of their face, and that will set some fish on fire.
Oh yeah. And
then you're going for day 2. You have 5 fish already at 10 pounds. You're looking real good. Day goes on, pressure will change. If it goes higher, they're going to stay down. So I'm making sure I'm always keeping this tight on the shaky head, or even as simple as a Texas rig trick worm. That will get you a long way. Y'all, please throw it. Try it out. I'm telling you, get you an 1/8 ounce weight on there. Texas rig with about a 2/0 hook is a lighter wire hook, and you will have. That's a great way to catch fish. It's a forgotten art. It's old timers secret right there. If I'm looking for something a little more aggressive, I might up my size of my little football, but I'm still staying finesse. And of course, like I said, that's situational. A lot of people live and die by the jig, but don't look at the time of moon cycle they're in, if they're going to be out or fishing in the right structure. So that's one's a little more subjective. That'll be like the crankbait category, but I'm still holding on to it, especially if I got bit on it. The crankbait, I call what I have the holding box. So I have my main rod box right here. And then my other rod box, I call it my dresser and my holding box. I'm going to have those 2 tied on in there. And it's easy access. If I get the gut feeling, I'm going to go. but I'm not wanting to put it on my deck because I know I'm gonna rely on it too heavy. Once again, I saw the fish kind of a little more suspended at this spot, breaking out the good old finesse. This day 2, they are highly more likely to hit the rattle trap. They're going to get a little more aggressive. They're going to get a little more keyed. Noise is going to trigger them a little bit better. So you're just going to say, okay, well, I'm going to utilize the aggressive fish that I have now in my ballpark. And day 1, I was able to work them with this chatterbait. Day 2, I'm breaking her right back out and throwing it in front of their faces on a steady retrieve and seeing what they're going to do. Day 2, I'm all about trying to challenge those fish to see what they do. And a lot of times you will get a high pressure front push up in the afternoon, so don't freak out. Just go back to the day where you caught them the day before, move back deep. And if they, especially in Florida, and this is the other where I'm going to default back to Florida. Back in Florida, and we're still offshore, but we're up and aggressive. We've let you know that we're here. I've spotted some big ones on the live. We're going back to the big old challenge.
Absolutely.
And that's the basis for me for winter fishing. It's just utilizing baits and utilizing the distance in which they travel, whether it be vertically, depth, and just keying in and being a little more reliant on your imaging and everything. You have to utilize what you have. Now, if you're a co-angler, you're bank fishing. This is where I'll even go to bank fishing because I've learned some of this from the bank, to be fully honest with you. That's where you have to utilize on your skill and being mindful of what you're doing. And that really comes key into it of knowing where you're fishing at. I will also, on these days, point blank, hot day 2, the heat up, or if we have one coming in, I don't want to forget, is a Carolina rig.
Absolutely.
Carolina rig is especially with a I will Carolina rig a trick worm all day long, especially in cold weather. And I will drag it slow, barely move. If you think you're working slow, work slower. And when you think you're finally working slow enough, slow down even more. And that kind of mindset was what will go out and catch you fish, whether you're in Florida. If I'll switch it up now, if I'm around rock, if I'm deeper in there on rock looking for that heat, I'll throw the Carolina rig in a heartbeat with a crawl wall behind it. Yep. And instead of throwing something like fluorocarbon, because commonly you're not going to see your let me put it this way. I'm gonna put a metaphor. If I'm outside, and I'm at McDonald's and that burger is floating above my head, and that burger usually stays on my plate. To be honest with you, I'm not eating it. That's just me. I don't know about y'all, but I'm not eating that burger that's floating. Something's wrong with that. Why would you, on Carolina rig, if you're throwing around rock, and our primary forage is going to be something like a crawl or something of that nature, and you can get them called, especially for smallmouth and spotted bass, I'm going to throw fluorocarbon.
Yep.
I'm going to throw a lighter fluorocarbon, relatively, for about 12-pound fluorocarbon, because we're around rocks. And I'm going to try to keep that thing down as much as possible. Have a flare every once in a while because they will hop. That is natural. Yeah. But it's just paying attention to these key little things and making these key little tweaks. And lastly, and before I forget this is one of the biggest things I told myself not to forget. I about did, because I can talk for hours about this. But you have to chase water clarity too this time of year.
Yep.
Common times you don't see rain. Common times in the winter we're starting to see a little bit of issue where our pools are getting a little bit different. Our water clarity. It's key to identify those feeder creeks too. So you have to commonly, if you have a feeder creek, if you haven't had rain, that's a little bit clearer water. It's commonly going to be even warmer water too coming into the lake than the main lake. So if you have a feeder creek feeding into a deeper area, that is just what you want right there. A lot of times it'll be clear water. If you have clear water, you're commonly going to find more fish. But you have to look at water clarity too, based off how your fish, how your specific body of water fishes, and that's really just the key. The keys to cold water fishing is finding the good water clarity, finding the right thermocline, the right temperature, and the right depth, because the depth will determine the thermocline. So they kind of go hand to hand. But if you you can find some hotter water running from a feeder creek, maybe a little bit shallower, it's just going to make it all the easier to catch them and keep an eye on them and figure out what they're doing. Because those fish are more likely to move, but still you have some stuff you can come put together, and it gives you more variety, more field coverage. Because not everyone in the field, when you're tournament fishing, is going to think, hey, I caught them 5 foot yesterday. We had a cold front coming. They're going to be now in 15. Let me go look at my maps here. Let me identify okay, here, if my point was right here,
Yep.
there's a channel swing right here, and there's some deeper water. Let me go check by that point, just by that channel swing and some deeper water, and just utilizing your keys like that, of utilizing those things that are simple to find, and then being fast to a point is key. I don't want to throw 5,000 baits in front of them. I know I told y'all to put about 16 rods on your day. I'm not saying burn them down with it, but use what makes sense. They're slower moving. As a heavier duty cold front, high pressure. Let's move deep. Let's work slow. Day number 2, we're heating up. They're probably not going to be in the same spot as yesterday. Let's go a little bit off of them and graph them, and let's see if they're looking good there. Okay, they moved up a little bit. They're off the bottom. They're more aggressive. Let's something to challenge them a little bit. And just looking and checking on your fish, and just truly your gut instinct. If your gut instinct is saying, "Hey, I can notice. I'm taking a look at the pressure right now. It's dropping. The sun's warming up. They're going to be moving a little bit shallower. They're going to be ready to feed. Let's capitalize on this window." And that's key. We're keeping an eye on the barometer during the winter is number 1. On top of that, and keeping an eye on the water temperature. If it's heating up, the barometer and the temperature is what's going to move fish to go be more active for bait. So
Absolutely. I've caught fish in Loudon when it's cold, and they're so far down, like that red clay, their bellies are red. I'll catch them, and they're like red bellies. That's why I start throwing that jig. So absolutely,
get down there on them, keep it in their face, and make it something that's easy, either super small or super big. I will throw a mag draft, and this is something that I've gotten newer on. This used to be the old school mag draft, but now they've gotten even bigger. I've gotten to the point now where I'm more willing to throw a mag draft on the fish that are dormant, something big, and just kind of bump it on the bottom to them. And that's just like the chatterbait. I'll bump on the bottom on the chatterbait once you find the right vibration, if they're wanting vibration or not, and bump it on the bottom to them, and your hookup rate will go crazy. You will just find some fish that you did not expect to be down there, just utilizing your context clues. The fish will tell you what they want. You just have to be patient. You have to be patient and listen to what they want. Because if I'm throwing the best lesson I can tell you that I learned this is using your context clues. So I was fishing a grass lake on a day that I didn't expect a topwater bite where it's too high a wind. I was working a big old magnum speed worm. On top of the water, got a little jacked up, so I was reeling in, and I had a 3-pounder smoke it, just unreal how beautiful blow up. It was textbook. I was like, where's the cameras? We need them right now. Just
turn them on.
Blow up. Fish tail out the water. It's just trying to wiggle through the grass, hook up, the rod sings for all the hydrilla. I mean, I was like, I need to be on Bill Dance's show right now. Like,
I heard that.
It's like, put me on the pro tour. Like, I got it going on. But that was my best thing, is just use your indicators. And of course, utilize what you already know about the lake, your technology that you have, which is your live scope, your live imaging, your mapping. That's all key to getting you to that point to figure out what exactly you need to do. But just come in mind, I'll reiterate one more time for everybody, because we're about to close out. I know that. Know the depth of water you want to be looking at. Know what day you're on. Cold front coming in. I know it's been about this cold, but we have a cold front push through, or hey, I know it's a little bit colder than average, so I know what we're at. You need to watch the barometer and find through those 3 things, find the thermocline, and then just from there it's context clues. Use your context clues, and you will be successful if you utilize those 5 things. That's how and your bait variety and choice, of course.
Absolutely. I got a quick comment from our old buddy Andrew Pulliam. Says, "Hey guys," and then he says, "I caught bass this past weekend with mud on their bellies too. They started cold and it warmed up, and so did the bite."
Exactly, and
you'll beat that.
You got to utilize where you're at too. If you know that you're in deeper water and all of a sudden that bite seems to dry up, move up a couple feet. I guarantee you they're up there chasing it, and that's what we'll do. Is you have to know when your weather patterns are this time of year, because if you don't have a realistic idea of, hey, tomorrow it's going to be heating up, so I need to know especially around midday, to really start making a push to go shallow. It's all about adjustment. In the winter, your bites will change. I've had some of the best bites to go from catching 20-pound bags of spot up on Lake Lanier one day. Day number 2, because I didn't make an adjustment, I caught 5. And if I would have gone 5 foot up, I would have caught. And it's just making sure that you go try a lot of bait, feel them out, use the right bait in the right scenario by doing your research and what you have done. And winter fishing will be a breeze. And don't forget the chatterbait trick, because that has been the difference between me catching fish and not. The chatterbait trick is huge.
Oh yeah, there's guys around Chickamauga. They'll throw that chatterbait winter. I fished with one guy a couple times. He fishes chatterbait year round, all the time.
I do too, especially in
Yep.
the summer. If we have fish that are schooled up aggressive, you pop that chatterbait with a big flashing blade at them, and they are on top of it.
Yeah, and I like that Evo. I like you said that Evo.
Yep.
I'm fishing the kayak some now, and I like that connector. I'll actually use braid on that because I don't have, I can't set the hook too much, so I use braid on that with that Evo, and it's money.
The thing is here is a jackhammer right here.
Yep.
Here's that Evo. It's the same blade. I'll be
yeah.
honest with you. It's the same exact blade, different connector.
Yeah.
Now,
I like that connector better, especially on braid.
I'll be honest with you, it hunts a little bit better because a chatterbait, you want a natural movement. You don't want to bring it back, slow retrieve back to you. If you're straight retrieving your crankbait, chatterbait, your crankbait, chatterbait, and your spinnerbait, which I don't utilize a lot. In cold weather, I will throw a big ounce spinnerbait in deep water and slow roll it on bump in the bottom. I will do that. That's another great one for cold days. You can produce a lot of big bites with. But if you're straight retrieving it, you're wrong. I hate to call out the normal, but you're wrong if you're straight retrieving anything. Because you got to think about this. You got to look at your situation here. If you know you have fish chasing and being aggressive, no shad's just going to come swim past this big old predator, that big old black hole coming after it. Normal. They're not going to do that. They're darting and ducking and getting away, and that's what makes the fluke so great. Because it's natural cut dive, and that's what makes this darter rig, that because it will shoot up and will fall back down just like that.
Yeah, kind of flutter, kind of almost like a flutter sort of.
It's better than for me. It's better than a flutter spoon because it's less metal. The more shine, I know that's what makes the spoon so good. I don't like all that visibility. Some guys do. Y'all can have it because that's a lot cheaper if I break one off too.
Hey, I hear you, man. Hey, you gotta see where you can, but I said I've gotten more comfortable with the chatterbait, and I like that 3/4. I use a 3/4 sometimes. This thing I like, especially on the bottom. I'll let that thing kind of slow roll. Like I said, I'll pause it. I'll kind of pop it, pause it. So I remember KVD said one time, if you're fishing, pause it, speed it up, slow it down, make it do something erratic. So
especially if you're fishing. You want something that will float, of course. For my jerk baits, I don't really like anything that sinks. I like it to kind of stay in the pattern, the same place that it's going to be in, and that all of a sudden that flick, that's what makes the jerk bait so dangerous, because it's like, okay, I saw you, I'm getting away, and that reaction bite goes crazy even with slow and lethargic fish.
Oh yeah, or you have a fish following it. He'll follow it all the way to the boat. Then you change color or size and throw it out there, and he's all over it. So
it's something different, especially that flash. And if you're slow retrieving a chatterbait back, my biggest weapon that I have, especially around cover, right as I'm coming up on a blowdown in the right temperature of water, I like to throw a 1/2 ounce if I'm trying to get a little bit deeper. But I will throw 3/8 because it's kind of a little less aggressive. I'll play with it. If during winter I'm throwing a 1/2 ounce, I'll even throw an ounce too.
Yep.
They make that in the Evo now, but I highly recommend the Evo for anybody over the jackhammer. Point blank.
Oh yeah. It's just as good or better. Like I said, I like the connector a lot better.
It's a lot better, in my opinion. That's my opinion. I know a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, hey, I'm telling you, for the price point and for what it is, it's a better bait, especially if you're especially if you're trying to give your bait action because you control it." I'll put a freeloader on the back of this, and in the winter, especially when I'm kind of reeling it up, that freeloader will move around a lot and give that good action. Now, if I'm just trying to create the big bite, I'll throw this one, but I'll even throw the freeloader on the Evo. You put that combination together, and you have a dangerous duo right there. Especially, and even for the summer too. The summer is a great combination. But it's just key. But you pop your chatterbait too. I have a 6-3-1 rule. Six turns, 3-1, and then I'll kind of go sporadic after that. But on average, after 6 turns, I want to pop it. You have something looking at 3. If he kind of got interested, hitting that one, and then 1, of course, if it pops, then if he really hasn't gone after it, then he's like, okay, I'm on to you.
Heard it. And Andrew says, "Hey, I'm out, guys. Good stuff. Thanks for all the ideas." Hey, thanks for tuning in, Andrew.
Absolutely.
Take care,
Thanks,
man.
Sir.
Yeah, but man, you gave plenty of juice, man, and we enjoyed it. Always having you always share all the juice and always entertaining and informative at the same time. So
That's what I try to do. Not as much juice as the worm one, but I'm always ready to get something out.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, John had a little technical difficulty, so that's why he had to drop out. So, but anyway,
oh yeah, I understand.
oh yeah, I hear you. But hey, man, I appreciate you having on, and I hope you whack them. And I'm sure we'll be talking soon. And any shout outs you'll do, any sponsors or anybody helps you out?
Absolutely. My main guy, I've shouted him out before, always will. But it's Badass Baits on Facebook. Patrick Gray, I'll never forget how I met him. We were fishing a tournament, and I imagine, I had a boat one day, and the next day I was younger, so earlier on in my life, so I started I had a boat. In the next tournament, we ended up putting a hurting on him. So he kind of was really great. He's asking me, how are you doing that? And I was like, I can't quite tell you yet. You'll have to find out. But he always has been a great, huge supporter of mine, and one of the best contacts that I've had. He creates some awesome stuff. I've asked some of the impossible of him, and he's done it. To be fully honest with you, I don't know how he does it, but he's a great painter. He's a great artist, and that's key because this is a good bait. But in the right hands and the right tone, I can tell him and show him a picture of what I'm looking for. He makes a bait. He can make that bait 10 times better.
Wait.
And that is the key, is just adding in that little bit of extra flair. And he's starting to broaden his horizons. I'm hoping he'll get into some. If I can find some transparent hollow body frogs, I will be blowing him up because that's the one thing that if I could get him to paint, I would be he'd be a millionaire off of, because I could produce some stuff. But he's always painted. Whenever I've had a kind of specialty color or idea that I've had, I need to get in contact with him right now because I have a really good idea for a swim bait that I need painted. So he's the man to call. If you look him up, Badass Baits, Patrick Gray, he has all of his information. It's not hard to get a hold of him, but he is the man when it comes to painting baits. A lot of people say that, but he's legit. He is legit.
Cool.
And I got to shout out my mentor. I don't know if he's watching tonight, but his name's Sean. He's of Northeast Florida Bass Guides. So he's taught me pretty much everything I know. I've learned a lot on my own adventuring, but he has just developed me more than I've ever could ever develop myself. So I got to give him a shout out. I don't know if he's watching.
Cool, man. Can't beat that. But how cold is it down in Florida right now?
Oh man, it's a freezing 63 degrees right now.
Killing me, man. I'm like in teens up here in the Erie. So killing me.
I'll be honest with you. Yesterday was we got down to 43, and we still caught. It was in the, I don't know. I'd say it got down to the 40s when we were fishing, and we still ended up putting 40 in the boat. So we did pretty good. It's helped me out. I'm telling you, it's helped me out for just utilizing all these little baits. But that's why I'm giving it to y'all. I want y'all to be able to go out there and at least make something simple. Because the best thing that I was told is I've had guys around me that have always kind of given me idea of what route to go, and then just being able to put it how I fish is what makes it easy for y'all. And I know I talk fast and I'm firing off the hip, but there's so much I'm trying to get in. Please rewatch it. Please give these guys a like, comment, subscribe, everything for these guys, because they're giving anglers like me who want to share a lot, who want to get some word out there, and they're the guys that will actually make you better. These guys that are on their podcast, not up there doing it for the money on a big podcast like Scott Martin and all them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And hey guys, he gave you a floor plan, a blueprint. So go back and get your pencils, notebook ready. He laid it out for you.
Don't be afraid to slow it down. I know.
Yep. Or replay it. Go back and replay it.
10 seconds, 30 seconds, really.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But hey, Nick, we appreciate you. If you want to, just hang around for a second afterwards. I just want to talk to you for a second. So
great. I'll be here.
All right. Well, thank you for seeing Nick, and we'll see you again on the flip side. All right, guys. All right, and thanks, guys, for tuning. Especially Andrew. I know you're always there, and everybody else. We appreciate you. So catch you tomorrow night. Peace out.